Now, Western media reports invariably diss Russia. We're right, they're wrong, end of story, monsieur. When it comes to reporting Russia, even the pretense of balance goes straight out the window, as we console ourselves that the Western world, always and everywhere, has the moral high ground, and Vladimir Putin is nothing but a power-hungry despot who wants to kill us in our beds.
Regardless of ideology, believe me when I say to you, I hope the Russians love their children too.
Of course Russians in Crimea want closer ties with Moscow. And of course many Russian speakers across Ukraine were alarmed at the ousting of a democratically elected president by rioting, rock-throwing thugs that were backed by the West. Russian soldiers, meanwhile, have long had the right to be stationed in Crimea. Did more cross the border and actually invade Ukraine? Maybe, or maybe not. I've yet to see clear invasion footage.
Why have you got such a rosy view of Mr. Putin?
I don't think I've got a rosy view. I just think I've got a balanced view. And I think many of my brothers and sisters in the Western media have got a skewed view. But you know, this guy is spectacularly popular in his own country. He's got very high approval ratings because, as far as Russians are concerned, the majority of them, he's turned the economy around, he's restored their national pride, he's taken on the oligarchs, he's taxed the oil and gas companies, and he's given them back some self-respect.
He's also a rather nasty authoritarian, isn't he? I mean, he controls the media, he runs a regime which discriminates against homosexuals, and there's very little freedom now left in Russia.
I don't know how much time you spent in Russia in the last 20 years, Andrew, but I've been going to Russia regularly.
He doesn't control the media?
I spent a lot of time living in Russia. I first lived there in the early 90s, and the change from the early... This was the most authoritarian society in the world within my lifetime, 25 years ago. And if you compare it what was then to what it is now, the progress is enormous.
There's no major media outlet in the country, all of which is spewing out anti-Ukrainian propaganda at the moment, that he doesn't control.
That's just not true. There are many, many independent newspapers in Russia, independent television channels. You can
he
walk...
just closed down the last two or put Kremlin people into them.
You can walk along the Starý Arbat in central Moscow and stand on a soapbox and say exactly what you like. Of course, it's not as pluralistic as many Western countries, but 25 years ago it was a totalitarian dictatorship. What's the direction of travel here? The direction of travel is almost entirely to the good.
Is there any doubt in your mind that he effectively annexed Crimea?
Well, I think there are two sides to the story. On the one hand, if Crimea becomes part of Russia, and it's not entirely clear that will happen, there could be a deal cut without Kiev's say-so, then that's a transgression of international law. On the other hand, you have enshrined in the UN Charter the right to self-determination, which the Crimean people have clearly expressed. Also, the Russians would say, Andrew, that the current Ukrainian government is completely illegitimate, and almost any objective commentator would agree with them.
The Russians
Yanukovych wasn't popular.
Well, he's a kleptocrat.
Yanukovych wasn't popular, but you know, because I know you do your research, Andrew, and I respect you for it, that the 2010 OSCE report said of Yanukovych's election, let me finish, it was fair, quotes, it was pluralistic, quotes, it was a good example of democracy. We have now backed a situation where the Ukrainian people weren't allowed to unelect that guy. That's the irony. Next year, they would have unelected him. We stopped that happening. We stopped that happening. Are you proud of that as a Westerner, as a Democrat, as somebody that's interested in pluralistic politics?
I don't think my pride is the issue here.
No, but you're defending a situation where we removed a democratically elected politician.
We didn't do that. The Ukrainian people did that.
With an awful lot of Western endorsement and Western backing and Western leaders standing with megaphones in central Kiev screaming the odds.
One final question. Are you in any doubt that once he did become the leader, he just filled his boots with Russian support? That he is a kleptocrat?
Yeah, look, this is correct. Look, Russia, Ukraine, many parts of many emerging markets, many parts of the developing world, there are grubby fusions of money and politics going on. They're nascent capitalist societies, like we were a nascent capitalist society at the end of the 19th century. It's not pretty, but at least these guys, they're trying to adopt democracy. These things take time.
All right.
But are we right to upend the path of Ukrainian democracy by effectively intervening to stop a politician who'd become unpopular from being democratically unelected as he was democratically elected. I have major concerns as a British person that we're involved in a situation that stopped that natural progression of Ukrainian democracy from happening.
Is totally dependent on oil, which is a very variable price commodity. The ruble has, of course, sunk very, very badly during this crisis.
Because you're pressing to get in, so on you go.
No, OK, all I'd say is that, you know, I've spent most of my adult life studying the Russian economy from literally the early 90s onward. And back in 2003, the Russian economy was 40% oil and gas. It's now 15% oil and gas, less than Norway. Yes, of course, it is a hydrocarbon superpower, but Russia's service sector is 3 times bigger than its oil and gas sector. It is a myth to say that this is entirely a petro economy. It's diversifying incredibly quickly, as any decent emerging market investor will tell you. It's not true to say also that the population's declining. Everyone says that all the time. Russia now has a birth rate that's higher than the EU average, and the decline in population that they saw was far less than almost any other East European country.
Well, it won't be
so we believe what we want to believe because we have a Cold War mentality that we have to hammer these guys and beat them into the ground. That's not right. We should be trading with these guys and treating them as partners.
I need to bring Diane.